All right, here we go. Algebra 1. This is lesson number 10, and it is the last learning lesson of Algebra 1 of the year. Next week will be more of kind of a check-in type of lesson, not as mathy or algebra-esque. So, the big learning target here is, well, what we're doing is we're solving equations in this assignment. I'm going to do problems 1 through 6 for you, and then you'll have 7 through 14 to do. The big learning targets here are to identify if the equation is linear or quadratic, because we're going to look at those two different situations, and we solve those differently because, well, they're different types of equations. So given looking at the equation, if it's linear or if it's quadratic, then choosing the appropriate method for solving, and then solving accurately and finding the correct answer. So those are like the main learning targets. Basically, it's a review of solving equations. Last week we did a review of graphing. This week we're reviewing solving. So those are kind of the big things that I want you to take from Algebra 1. You can solve equations, you can graph functions, along with thinking, and I have like a mathematical thought process, basically. So given that this is the last actual lesson, I just want to take a moment to say thank you for actually watching these videos, for actually doing the work. Those of you that are doing the work, I'm thanking you because you're watching the videos. So I really appreciate the work that you put in. It's a crazy time, so thank you. You're awesome. All right, let's go ahead and jump in on problems 1 and 2. So problem 1, and remember we're solving. We have 6 times parenthesis x minus 3 minus 8x equals 6. And then problem 2, we have 6 times x minus 3 squared minus 8 equals 6. So here we got to look at this and be like, all right, what's the difference? These two equations look very similar. So we look at it and say, well, actually, I want to take a moment. There's 2 things that are different other than the color that I used to write them, and the fact that one problem is number 1, one problem is number 2. Find the 2 differences, the 2 main differences. Go ahead and just pause it, find them. Hopefully, you found this has a minus 8x, that has a minus 8. That's just to make the problem more interesting. And here, this is just x minus 3. It's 6 times x minus 3. This is 6 times x minus 3 squared. So this part that's squared, that's affecting the x, that makes this a quadratic function. Here, this is a regular x. That's a regular x. It's like x to the 1. That makes this a linear function, or linear equation. Sorry, quadratic equation, linear equation, not functions, because it's just x, not y. Sorry. So we're going to solve these differently. What I'm going to do for problem 1, because it's linear, I want to combine all the x's together. But I've got this x minus 3 stuck inside these parentheses, and I got a 6 here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to distribute the 6 through the parentheses. So I get 6x minus 18 minus 8x equals 6. Right now, okay, I've got x's on one side, numbers on both sides. So I'm going to get rid of this minus 18 by adding 18 to both sides. Right, that makes 0 over here. That gives us 24 there. And I'm going to combine like terms. We've got to be careful when we combine like terms, because here is a positive 6x and a minus 8x. So 6 minus 8 is negative 2. Right, we're not adding this 8 and 6 to get 14, because it's 6 minus 8, because there's that minus in front. So I have negative 2x equals 24. Remember, that means multiply, right? It's negative 2 times x equals 24. I'm going to divide both sides by a negative 2. Be careful, make sure you use a negative. And we're going to get x equals negative 12. That's the answer there, right? Cool. Probably yeah, I remember how to do that. Awesome. If we look at problem 2, we notice, it's got this square. I cannot distribute the 6 into the x minus 3. Because it's 6 times x minus 3 times x minus 3. There's 2 x minus 3's getting multiplied because of the squared part. Right? And then there's the minus 8 equals 6. So here we look at this and we're like, this quadratic is in vertex form. So we're going to solve it, excuse me, we're going to solve it by working backwards. So we look at it, it's x minus 3 squared times 6 minus 8 equals 6. So I get rid of the minus 8 first. Get rid of the thing that affects the x last. Get rid of that first. We're going backwards through our order of operations. So here I'm going to go plus 8 plus 8. What? Oh my goodness, this was supposed to be a 16. My bad. It's like, that number's not going to work out nicely. It would not have. So plus 8 plus 8. Sorry. You're probably looking at it and be like, Mr. Race, the problem 2 is the line doesn't match up. Yeah, it's a 16. Sorry, it should be a 16 on your assignment as well. I just didn't read it properly. My bad. So 6 times x minus 3 squared equals 24. I'm like, all right. So it's x minus 3 squared, then times 6. I gotta undo, work backwards. So I start with this times 6 and do the opposite of that, which is going to be divide by 6. Divide by 6. So now I have x minus 3 squared equals 4, because 24 divided by 6 is 4. And now I got to get rid of this square, because x minus 3 and then squared. To get rid of that, we do the opposite of squaring, which is square rooting. Remember, it's this symbol. And when we square root in an equation, we got to throw in that little plus or minus. Now, this is something that a lot of you have struggled with. Not a lot of you, but some of you have struggled with. Is at this step. So here, this x minus 3 squared getting square rooted just gives us x minus 3 equals, and then we're going to go positive or negative, and then we're going to take the square root of that 4. We'll say the square root of 4 is 2 because 2 times 2 is 4, so it's plus or minus 2. Right? Not 4. Whenever you write the square root on a number, you got to actually take the square root of that number. When you write it on something squared, those just cancel out. When you write it on a number, you got to take the square root of it. You say, what number times itself gives you that? And that's 2 in this case. So now I have x minus 3 equals plus or minus 2. I'm going to go find x by itself, so I just add 3 to both sides. Plus 3 plus 3. Another thing to be careful with here is make sure, right, it's 3 and then plus or minus 2. See how that plus or minus is in front of the 2? That plus or minus will stay in front of the 2, not the 3. So now I'm going to go 3 plus 2, right? So 3 plus 2, 3 minus 2, that's the plus and the minus part. And I get x equals 5 or x equals 1. Those are my 2 answers, and that's it. Boop, boop, boop. So quick recap, the differences here, the main difference is these are both regular x's. So we can distribute if it's just regular parentheses. We cannot distribute if it's getting squared, right? Because really there's x minus 3 times x minus 3, so that 6 doesn't go to both of them, right? So there's no square. We can distribute, combine like terms, get the numbers on one side, x is on the other, divide, got it. Here, if it's in vertex form like this, work backwards, undo the minus 8, undo the multiply by 6, undo the square with plus or minus square root. Remember to actually take the square root, and then undo this minus 3. Don't forget about the plus or minus, right? That plus or minus is on the 2, plus or minus stays on the 2. Cool, so that's problems 1 and 2. Let's now look at problems 3 and 4. And feel free to work ahead if you want. If you want to try these problems, go ahead and pause the video and try to do problems 3 and 4. And then come back and look, say, hey, how did I do? Maybe it'll help you learn. Maybe it'll be more fun that way. Or you can just watch the video and follow along. Whatever works for you, do that. All right, so drop my pen. Oh, this tie clip isn't working very well. There we go. Problem 3, we have negative 18 equals 4x plus 5x minus 27. And then for problem 4, I have negative 18 equals 4x squared plus 5x minus 27. So, quickly, what's the difference between these two equations? Go ahead and think about it. What's the difference? I'm going to grab a sip of water. You're right. The difference, and hopefully you set it to your computer screen or phone or whatever, The difference is the fact that this is a 4x and this is a 4x squared. This is linear, this is quadratic. Here, this 4x and 5x are both regular linear x's, just regular x's. So I can combine like terms there. This is a 4x squared and a 5x. I cannot combine those. No, because this is 4 times x times x. This is 5 times x. Those aren't the same thing. We can't just put them together. So let's go about solving problem 3, then solving problem 4, and we'll get it from there. All right, so here we identified, hey, this is linear. Those are regular x's. I can combine like terms to get negative 18 equals 9x minus 27. Wonderful. Now I can add 27 to both sides. Because we're trying to find out what x is. We're just doing the opposite of what's happening to x. Because 9x minus 27, do the opposite. So I have negative 18. Oh my goodness, I don't have negative 18. I have positive 9. Sorry. Positive 9 equals 9x. Because negative 18 and 27 can give us 9. And then divide by 9, divide by 9. X equals 1. And that's it. X equals 1. Linear equation, one answer. Now let's jump over to the quadratic. Like, it's got a quadratic. And guess what? It is in standard form, that ax squared plus bx plus c style of equation. And here, remember, we've got the quadratic formula to use there. We're write the quadratic formula here. X equals negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2 times a. But that only works when we have 0 equals ax squared plus bx plus c. So what we need to do is say, that's a negative 18. I don't want a negative 18. I want a 0 right there. 0 equals to make it look like that. So I can use quadratic formula. So I need to add 18 to both sides. So I'm going to go plus 18 to make it equal to 0. So we get 0 equals 4x squared plus 5x. And then negative 27 and 18 give me minus 9. Now, wonderful, got that. I can go about using my quadratic formula. We could factor this if you want to, right? Draw the box out with the 4x squared in the top corner and like adds to 5, multiplies to negative 36, that sort of thing. We can just use quadratic formula. Let's just do that. So here, x equals negative b, which is 5, right? Because a, b, c, plus or minus the square root of 5 squared, which is 25, minus 4 times a, which is 4, times c, which is negative 9, divided by 2 times a, which is 2 times 4. Now you'll remember this from when we solved quadratics using the quadratic formula before, that we're going to look at the discriminant. We're going to look at this. We're like, all right, this is 25. And then here I've got negative 4 times negative 4 is 16. 16 times 9 is 144. So it's plus 144, and it's plus because of the double negative here. I have a minus and then a negative 9, right? You can just count out how many negatives or minuses you have. If it's even, then that turns into a plus. If it's an odd number, if it's like negative, 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 then it would still be minus. Or if it was just negative, positive, positive, so there's only one negative, then it would be negative. Here, we have 2, we have a minus and a negative, that's 2 of them, even, so it's plus. So here, it's the square root of 25 plus 144, it's the square root of 169, which is 13. So I get x equals negative 5 plus or minus 13 over 8. Cool. So I just got to do the negative 5 plus 13, negative 5 minus 13, divide them both by 8. So I have negative 5 plus 13 over 8, negative 5 minus 13 over 8. Negative 5 plus 13 is 8. 8 divided by 8 is 1. So here, x equals 1. Or negative 18 divided by 8. We can simplify that down to negative 9 over 4. Right? We simplify it down by saying, hey, this is 2 times 9. That is 2 times 4, so cancel out the 2's. negative 9 over 4, or just divide top and bottom by 2. Okay, so go back to the original learning target here. How do we identify how to solve each problem? We looked at this one, said, hey, those both x's are regular x's. They're linear. Regular x, I can combine like terms, solve like we did in semester 1. Looking at problem 4, we had a 4x squared and a 5x. Those are different. The x squared makes it quadratic. So what we do is say, hey, we have a quadratic formula in order to solve these types of equations. Here's our quadratic formula. It only works when the equation equals 0. So we get rid of this minus 18 by adding 18 to both sides, get it equal to 0, use a, b, and c, simplify, get our 2 answers. Remember, with a quadratic, you can get 2 answers, you can get 1 answer, or you can get no real solutions. Okay. 2 more problems, and then we're done. Well, then you gotta do problem 7 through 14. Then I'm done talking. But if you want to listen to me more, I mean, it's a video, so you can just like loop it if you want. Not that anybody would want to, but you know. And if you want me to stop talking, just hit the pause button or mute, and you can just watch it. I think it even has like captions, like it's like writing down what I'm saying as I'm saying it, right? It's kind of cool. I don't know how they do that. It's awesome computer stuff. Okay, let's go problem 5. Oh, that's the wrong direction. So here we got x plus 9 minus 3x plus 2 equals 0. And then problem 6, we have x plus 9 times 3x plus 2 equals 0. From dog Emma. Emma! Alright, let's say we want to solve these. Well, first thing we gotta do is say, which one's linear? Well, let's see, how are they different? Just look at them, how are they different? Go. Once again, I'm gonna get a sip of water. Probably a good view of the top of my head there. Alright, how are they different? Well, this is going to subtract. It's this minus that. Here, because the parentheses are right next to each other, that's multiplying. So here we'd have an x times an x, which would give us an x squared, which makes this quadratic and makes this linear. So here, we're going to solve these differently. And the way we identify is do we have 2 groups adding or subtracting. If it's adding or subtracting, it's just linear, we just add or subtract them. If it is multiplying, then it's quadratic, and we'll talk about that in a moment. We're going to use zero property for that. But let's look at the linear one first. Here, this x plus 9, parenthesis, there's nothing out front here, so we can just write down x plus 9 without the parentheses. We don't need the parentheses there. Because it's not doing anything. Parentheses are just grouping that piece. The parentheses here are saying we're subtracting all of this 3x plus 2, so we can distribute the negative to get a minus 3x minus 2 equals 0. If this was a plus, we would just keep those. It would just be like plus 3x plus 2. Because it's a minus, we distribute that negative, we get minus. So now like, cool, look, it's an x and a minus 3x. We can combine those. We have 1 minus 3 is negative 2x. And then I have 9 minus 2, that's 7. So negative 2x plus 7 equals 0. And then just continue solving, right? Subtract 7 on both sides. So negative 2x equals negative 7. Divide by negative 2. And x equals 7 divided by 2. Or you could just say x equals 3.5. Right, that works. Either one, I'll accept either answer. If it doesn't turn out to be a nice decimal, like 0.5 or 0.25, if you have to round or truncate, just cut it off. Don't do that, just leave it as a fraction. Fractions are wonderful answers. Okay, pretty simple once you get past this step of distributing. Let's look at problem 6. So problem 6 is multiplication. X plus 9 times 3x plus 2 equals 0. And what do we remember about multiplication and the number 0? Anything times 0 is 0, right? Or 0 times anything is 0. So the only way for this product, this multiplication to equal 0, is if either x plus 9 was equal to 0, or 3x plus 2 was equal to 0. Right, if either of those are the cases, then the whole product is 0, because 0 times anything is 0. So now if it is multiplication equal to 0, just take each factor, each thing in the parentheses, write this equals 0, that equals 0, and now we're just going to solve these two linear equations. So here I'm going to just go minus 9 minus 9. Oh, look, answer x equals negative 9. Or, all right, I'm solving this. Subtract 2 on each side. 3x equals negative 2. Divide by 3. X equals negative 2/3. Boom, those are our two answers. We got it. We're done. We're happy. Yeah. Woo! Look at that. Wonderful. So now, your job for problems 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 is to match up, hey, is this equation linear or is it quadratic? If it's linear, go about maybe distributing like we did with that negative, or in that first problem we distributed through the parentheses in that first step, and then combine like terms, and then work backwards to find out x equals. If it is quadratic, then identify, hey, is it in factored form, right? Something times something equals 0 and use the zero product property. Is it in standard form? Make it 0 equals ax squared plus bx plus c, and then use the quadratic formula. Or is it in vertex form, number times something squared plus or minus equals number? Then you just work backwards, and remember to put that square root in there. So that is it for the lesson. Hopefully these 8 problems aren't too bad for you. Email me, come to office hours, or drop in for the virtual office hours if you have questions. And I hope you all are doing well, and thanks for watching. Have a wonderful, wonderful week.